Cageside with John Morgan.
And welcome everybody, another episode of Cageside with John Morgan. I'm your host, Eric McMahon. Cool show on tap today. We're going to go over the Blessed Express, Max Holloway. He lands cleanest in a firefight. Anthony Smith walks away with somewhat of a questionable decision. We'll dive into that. Erin Blanchfield, she just keeps winning. Looking ahead, UFC Fight Night 226 in Paris. Ciryl Gane, Sergey Spivak, and then we're only 2 weeks away from Izzy and Strickland. To break all this down with me, my co-host, name is on the marquee, the blue t-shirt guy, also the first question guy. Follow him on Twitter, John Morgan _MMA. He is John Morgan. What's up, brother?
I'm good, man. Yeah, that show from Singapore ended up being a lot of fun. It was a wild one. Kind of happened in the middle of the night here in Las Vegas, so I watched it later after the fact. But this world tour is on right now for the UFC, man. They're going from Singapore to Paris to Australia, taking the octagon around the globe, man. It's cool stuff.
Yeah, I kind of like the start time because I got young kids, right? And so they wake me up super, super duper early. So I set them up with breakfast and bam, I set them up with cartoons. Got my fights on my little fight pass right here, watching it as they're watching cartoons. It was awesome. Didn't have to wake up the wife. The wife wasn't pissed off at me for watching MMA during family time. It's amazing.
I'm with you, man. You know, like I said, Singapore is a little extreme because it started like I think 2 a.m. here in Las Vegas for the first prelims. That's a little rough, but I do like, to be honest, the daytime MMA. I love it, man. You know, obviously we're watching this thing every weekend. It's one thing to just have your normal Saturday night. We're watching every weekend, so it's kind of nice to have it during the day, and you can still have your Saturday night with the family. Fights were over. I was done working. It was still daylight outside here in Las Vegas.
Got my testosterone in early for the rest of the day.
That's it.
All righty. Well, what was just a tremendously fun main event? I mean, if we're looking at it, did it have impact ramifications on the title picture? Probably not, right? But it was just fun. I mean, two guys that nobody wanted to lose in this fight. Everybody loves Max Holloway. Everybody loves the Korean Zombie. And Max Holloway defeats the Korean Zombie 23 seconds into round number 3 by a massive check hook, right? And it was really, as you know, Max Holloway put it, he landed first in that wild exchange.
Yeah, it's wild, man, because, you know, you talk about that fight, and it's weird to say that the number one contender in the division in Max Holloway is having a fight that doesn't really impact the title picture, but it's just true. Alexander Volkanovski's had 3 fights there. Not to say that there can't ever be a fourth, but there's just some other guys in line right now. Plus, Volkanovski is talking about trying to go back to 55 and get another fight with Islam Makhachev. So there's just a lot happening to where this really wasn't a number one contender fight, even though it was the number one contender. But it was 2 absolute legends of the game. As you said, somebody that you just didn't want to see. I mean, how do you cheer against either guy? All you're hoping to see is let's make it a fun fight. And sure enough, they delivered a fun fight, and you knew it was going to be a fun fight. I mean, you knew it was going to be exciting to watch. And shout out to the fans in Singapore, man. They gave it a nice vibe there, a nice experience as well. And I think we got what we wanted. It was just a fight that seemed destined to deliver on entertainment, and it did exactly that.
I mean, I loved everything about it. It was a fun fight. I mean, if you're not going to have any ramifications in the title picture, make it fun. That's exactly what they did here. Shout out UFC. Now I got to go back to Holloway's previous fight, and I said I don't think it was anything, you know, any hot take or whatever, but I was saying, you know, just a string of UDs that Max Holloway, and I was saying, you know, if he I think there are opportunities to step on the gas, that he was just saying he was knowing how good he was, he wasn't going to get compromised, so he wasn't going to overly take these chances to stopping fights. But watching Saturday, like, I really had to take a step back from my previous comments, because I think, as we both know, it takes 2 to tango, right? And with somebody's boxing who is so damn good in Max Holloway's, it takes a willing participant to, like, put themselves in that fire to have the ability to get stopped, right? And so I think my take was wrong a while ago. It's like, look, Max is Max. Like, he's going to do him. He's going to be the best boxer in the game. Unless he gets an opponent that's willing to match him or try to, either going for takedowns and creating other opportunities or standing in the pocket with them. It's hard to finish guys at this top level. But guess what? That's exactly what the Korean Zombie did this week. It was awesome.
Well, I think you're spot on. And I think it's so hard to remember that sometimes as fans, is that remember when guys are fighting at the absolute highest level of the sport. I mean, they're really facing the absolute best in the division every single time out there. And that's who Max Holloway has been competing against. He's been competing against absolute studs who know what his game is, who know what he's best at, and are trying to counter that. And so therefore are not setting themselves up to be in a position where they are going to get finished like that. But Korean Zombie just doesn't know any other way to fight. I mean, it's one of the best nicknames in all of the sport, but it's one that was earned. You know, it's not just given to him. I mean, he is a zombie. The man goes out there, can't be choked out. We saw that. And, you know, has to be killed with the headshot. And he went out there and just, you know, put in the mix and just said, look, I'm either going to win this fight or I'm going to go out on my shield. And he went out on his shield. And that's why he was the perfect dance partner for Max Holloway and why this fight ended up just being so fun to watch.
But he did have his moments in this fight, right? And there was one time, now I don't know if it's really been said, but from my point of view, it looked like he wobbled Max Holloway on one occasion in an exchange. And I think it was early in the second round. And it just shows like he was throwing caution to the wind. He was willing, as you said, to go out on his shield because he got dropped first round, second round, before the finish eventually in the third, but he was willing to get after it in every single round. And he wasn't throwing small shots. He was throwing everything was a big shot because I think he knew that's how he had to go in there and fight a Max Holloway. He had to match Holloway's precision and boxing with maybe an overwhelming force. And he gave it one hell of an effort and he had his moments.
He did. I think he knew that was his only path to victory, right? It was like, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to engage, I'm going to mix it up. And if I land the big shot, then that's how I get it done. And if the big shot gets landed on me, then that's what happens out there. And that's the way the Zombie has always fought, man. He goes for it. It's that classic statement, right? You know, he's willing to take one to give one. That's the Korean Zombie. That's Chan Sung Jung. And he went out there and he did it once again. And that's why he's such a beloved fan favorite. That's why people want to see him fight, because it doesn't really matter. He's one of those rarefied guys where it's like, I don't really care if he wins or if he loses. I just know he's going to put on a show for me. I know it's going to be a great fight, and that's why I got to tune in.
Yeah, let's get to the third round. Let's get to that fun third round. And there was something that said, this is the round I live or die. This is a round that's going to define this fight. And he comes out with a little bit of Stockton in him. He comes out, bop, 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 and he's like, come on, let's bring it. And he gave me a little bit of a Diaz vibe there, right? And then just entered the firefight, take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you laid it out perfectly. I mean, we're talking about a 23-second round, but how incredibly entertaining was it? Because we're going to go mixed up. We're going to go do this. And he pushed it and he charged it. And Max Holloway, he's that guy too, right? You want to point down to the center of the canvas and say, let's go. Max is that guy. He's going to answer. And he did. Landed the big overhand right. You saw the cut come on the forehead immediately as the shot landed, drops face first, and all class. Max Holloway saw the fight was done, didn't bother to go down with the coffin nails down there and the extra damage, just knew the fight was done. Got the rare walk-off. I know he talked about afterwards how excited he was to get the walk-off finish. Doesn't have a lot of those. And, man, an absolute highlight reel that brought everybody to their feet. And then it got a little dusty in there, man. It got a little bit emotional after that, man. It was a great highlight we were all excited about. And then the rest of the things played out and tugged at the heartstrings a little bit.
You know, and he was clear about it. If he can't fight at that highest level, which I think he can, right? But to him, he's in it to win a title. If he can't get there, you know, he was going to say he was done. And so he took them gloves off, and he retired. So, you know, I want to go through some memorable fights. It seems like every fight is memorable. He's got some records in here that just are amazing. We talked about earlier. He was, I think, was he the first ever twister submission in UFC history? I think he was number one.
Yes, he was. He was number one. Absolutely.
So I want to start with his most memorable fight in my opinion. Not to mention the fight that I believe put him on the map for everybody. And I believe this was the first time Zuffa had just bought WEC. And so they were the first time promoting, and it was WEC 48. He was the undercard. And this was the first time they did an undercard on like kind of a network television to sell the pay-per-view. It was WEC's first ever pay-per-view. The main event of the prelims was Leonard Garcia and the Korean Zombie, and these dudes went to war. He ends up losing a split decision victory, but that fight goes down in the record books for me. Top 3 of all time. I had no money at the time. I was living paycheck to paycheck, and I watched that fight, and I bought the first pay-per-view in WEC history because of that fight. It was amazing.
Yep. It was incredible. I was in the building that night in Sacramento, California, and you laid it out why it was such a I mean, the fight itself was just crazy. I mean, if you haven't watched that fight, get yourself on UFC Fight Pass and treat yourself to that. It is an absolute battle. But it was so cool because of exactly what you said. Not only was it just an incredible fight, a fight of the year type candidate, but a fight that was so important for Zuffa and the WC because of exactly that, right? It was leading into the first pay-per-view in the promotion's history. And so it was that sellable moment, right? And it's a moment that, Uriah Faber, a WC legend, has always talked about what a great spot that is to be on as a fighter, because you know how many eyeballs are watching the prelims, because there's a lot of people like you that maybe you're on the fence about buying a pay-per-view or not, but they're going to watch on ESPN. They're going to watch on ESPN Plus. They're going to watch on ABC, whatever it is, and you get more eyeballs. So deliver on that, and you become a star. And that's exactly why those two guys were in that position. Zuffa knew what they had there. They knew there were two all-action fighters, but my goodness, did they go out and deliver. That's literally one of the greatest fights in MMA history.
Man, I still remember it like it was yesterday. I'm like, who the hell is this Chan Sung Jung guy? Who is he? Because he is my new favorite fighter. It was unbelievable. And then, and then the main event that night, Jose Aldo, Uriah Faber, ended up being an awesome fight as well. And that whole night, that WEC pay-per-view #1 was amazing. And the Korean Zombie, did he earn his nickname that night?
He had the nickname for fighting over fighting over in Japan and fighting over in Asia, but yeah, I mean that was his WC debut. That was his a lot of people didn't know who the guy was until that moment. That is certainly the night that people learned who he was. And yeah, man, Aldo Faber in the main event, Benson Henderson, Cowboy Cerrone in the co-main event. What a great card that was. Anthony Pettis is on the prelims on Spike just before Leonard Garcia and Chance. I'm just looking at the card now, going through those memories, man. Those WC days. Chad Mendez, Brad Pickett versus Demetrius Johnson was on the prelims. Goodness. Is May 15th, 2012, the fight with Dustin Poirier. It was UFC on Fuel TV. It was out in Virginia. And it was a fight of the year candidate. I mean, it was another one of the greatest fights of the year, but will always stand out to me in kind of a different way, especially because it was 3 days after my son was born. And because of that, I did not make the trip. Probably would have been out there otherwise, but I knew I had an expectant mom on the way. So I said, hey, I'm sitting this one out, guys. I'm going to go watch that one. And like you, even though, here I was a full-time MMA reporter and traveling the world to see the sport, because of my child, had my phone out, was watching that one on the phone. And man, Dustin Poirier, talk about 2012 Dustin Poirier. That's before the first Conor McGregor fight. That's before a lot of people, I think, knew who Dustin Poirier was or who he would become. I mean, he was coming from the WC as well, but I think a lot of people didn't really know the name and had the reverence that they have for Dustin Poirier these days. And those guys went out there and put on an absolute battle. And the Zombie got that 4th round win, choking him out with the Darce choke. And yeah, it was a special one because it was another great performance, but I'll just never forget it. It's one of those ones I'll never forget where I was and what I was doing, because it was 3 days after the birth of my son. And then, gosh, I mean, you think about just the names that the Zombie would go on to continue fighting against. It's pretty unbelievable, man. What a career it was. And I remember after the fight on Saturday, one of my first initial thoughts was, is this guy a UFC Hall of Famer? I mean, never won the title. Fought some of his career in the WEC, which certainly factors into being a UFC Hall of Famer. But man, just the battles that he was in, the legendary wars that he was in, just the popularity that he had. I'm torn because I understand there's a bar, there's a standard when you're talking about the highest level Hall of Famer, but man, this guy is just an absolute legend of the sport, and it seems like he deserves to be honored in some sort of way. And I think, and I'd be interested to hear what you think about it, because I think the conclusion I came to was maybe he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Maybe he's not a guy that goes in immediately because you're like, yes, absolutely. But maybe he's one that the Veterans Committee put him in at some point or whatever. You know what I mean? Because he's just a guy that I think deserves an honor like that.
I mean, 17-8, it's really hard to argue that it's like at that. I mean, if we're just being real, but is that Leonard Garcia fight in the Hall of Fame?
I don't think it is yet, right?
Yeah, I don't think it is either.
No.
Travesty.
That has to be.
Has to be. Right? So in my opinion, he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Not necessarily in the fighter wing per se. Except, I mean, you could make a case, right? But definitely some of the fights he had. Listen, I was just, as you were talking, you were saying stuff, I was just looking up something. And I'm sure, I mean, me and you remember Mark Hominick.
Yep.
7-second knockout over Mark Hominick.
That's a stud right there. That's an absolute stud.
I mean, so what Korean Zombie has done in his career, and a lot of people, I think newer fans know him as, win one, lose one type guy. He fought Volkanovski for the title, but it's just because of schedules. That was the title fight, right? And that Volk kind of cleared out the division already. But I want to go over, his last 5 losses. Now, remember, 17-8. But here are 5 of his losses and not just 5 of his losses, his last 5 losses. Max Holloway, Volkanovski, Brian Ortega, Yair Rodriguez, Jose Aldo.
Bro, think about that. Now think about what you just said. Just naming off the names is incredible, right? The way you just did. Just naming off the names is incredible. But let me tell you this. Go pull up the UFC rankings right now. Champ, Alexander Volkanovski, of course. Who's number 1? Max Holloway. Who's number 2? Yair Rodriguez. Who's number 3? Brian Ortega. So we're talking about champ 1, 2, 3 right now. And oh, by the way, Hall of Famer and perhaps the greatest of all time in featherweight in Jose Aldo. I mean, that's insane.
And then that Leonard Garcia fight, that would be one of his 6 losses, but then he avenged that loss and got the first ever twister submission victory in UFC history. You know what? I'm talking myself into him being a Hall of Famer now.
Right? I'm saying that's kind of where I came at. Like, at first to go Chan Sung Jung, UFC Hall of Fame, you go, oh, come on, John, look at the record. No. But when you dive into it and when you relive it and when you think about it, it just seems like one that, like, how do you leave him out? I mean, if you're talking about the history of the sport, how do you not talk about him?
And a guy who lost years of his career due to military obligation.
That's right. Yep. For a lot, maybe people don't realize, but South Korea, mandatory 2-year obligation for all males. So you lose 2 years out of your career. You know, what could he have accomplished in that time? Who knows? Who knows? You know, it's even just another win or 2 here. You know what I mean? Like it all adds up. So I don't know. I just came to the conclusion. I think that's where I stand, is that, like, I get it. And I know there's no such thing as a first ballot Hall of Famer, but, you know, if you're comparing it to other sports like the NBA, the NFL, that sort of thing, where it's like, yeah, the moment they retire, they go in right away because they're the greatest of all time. Maybe he's not that guy, but I just think when you're talking about pantheon of the sport, where we're talking about people that deserve to be remembered and to be honored, like, he's one of those guys. I mean, just look at the popularity.
He opened up markets.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And just, again, I mean, by the way, let me give a quick shout out to UFC production as well, man. I thought the way they handled that retirement, while it wasn't, you know, the amazing Robbie Lawler promoted package or whatever, it was still pretty cool to let him lay it down, to capture that emotion, and then to just keep that camera on him. Just one shot, walk into the back. Nobody's talking. Don't talk over it. Just let the music, again, we're talking about iconic things. The Cranberries, Zombie, man, like, you know, like, I'm gonna kill these people. I'll edit that out. You can pick it up from there. Supposedly it's supposed to be fixed. I've had 5 technicians at my house, and I'm going to call them again today.
Well, I get let's go 3, 2. I'm a fan. You're a fan. Everybody's a fan of the Korean Zombie. They did him justice. Him and Max Holloway looked like they became new best friends after the fight. And how can you not? They're probably 2 most likable guys in the game, especially in that division. Now let's go from a definitive ending to maybe something that wasn't as definitive. Anthony Smith, 37-18, defeats Ryan Spann, 21-9 by split decision. This was a tale of two rounds with a third round that was divided early and late. So to me, there's not a lot of controversy here, right? This fight could have went either way, in my opinion. But some people did think it was very questionable. Anthony Smith starts out just looking world class. Round number 2, Ryan Spann hits him with some big shots, drops him, kind of blinds Anthony Smith for the kind of the rest of the fight. Definitely probably an orbital break there, right? And really hammers it. But to Anthony Smith's credit, he kind of comes back a little bit in that second round. Then the third round, I thought it was early Anthony Smith, late Ryan Spann. Any controversy there?
I don't think so. And I know, the great thing would be to stand up and be like, this was the worst decision or the best decision or whatever. I think you laid it out perfectly. It was so razor thin to me that when they stood together at the end of the third round and they're waiting to hear the judge's decision, I'm like, I don't know. This could easily go either way. I mean, round 1 is clearly an Anthony Smith round. Round 2 is clearly a Ryan Spann round. I got to give Anthony Smith credit for even surviving, man. I thought that fight was over and done with. I think he deserves a lot of credit just for showing heart and to battle back, as you said, to kind of climb back into it. And then round 3, I mean, literally just one of those rounds that you're picking a punch or 2 here and there to split it one way or the other. You know what I mean? So just a razor thin. And I think that's, again, it might be more fun to shout controversy and that sort of thing, but you just have to be honest. There are fights that are just razor thin, super close. And this was one of those, man. And so I had no problem with Anthony Smith winning, but I'll be honest with you. Had Ryan Spann had his hand raised as well, I'd have had no problem with that. If we're doing pride scoring, if we're doing full fight scoring, then we're giving it to Ryan Spann, right? Because he had the damage in round 2. He was the one that was clearly closing the finish, but that's not the scoring criteria that's being used, and that's not the way we do it. So this, to me, 2 clear rounds, a razor-thin third round, could have gone either way, and I had no issue with Anthony Smith getting his hand raised.
I didn't either. And listen, at the end of the day, it's what does the fan want to see? So I think from a trained judge's perspective, and we both sat in on the ABC judging criteria, we're kind of knowing what we're looking for, which may not be what the fans are looking for. I mean, I know that I know at the conference just this past year, they kind of sat some journalists down and some commentators and saying, like, you're commentating the wrong things and you're looking at not what the judges and the referees are looking. Here are the criteria. This is what's being looked at. So with that being said, Anthony Smith early was on his bike, but sticking jabs the whole time. He was landing, he was connecting. Later as the fight goes, or that round goes towards that end, that last minute or so, I think Ryan Smith knew it. And so he was pressuring a little bit more, albeit I don't think landing all that much, but that pressure leaves an impression with a lot of people. And so I think if we're going to go to that criteria, it's not a huge controversy. The optics might not look it, but I bet you the metrics play it out. And I haven't looked at the metrics. That's just my assumption.
Yeah, it's funny because I did look at the metrics. I haven't pulled them up in front of me right now, so I didn't quote them exactly, but it was as close as you thought it would be. You know what I mean? If you look at those numbers and you look at the stats, it's absolutely right there. It's as close as you thought it would be. So it might not be a suitable answer for everybody, but it's just me being honest. As you said, we're looking at it the way I believe we're supposed to, the way we're instructed to, and I felt it was just razor thin, and I had no issue with the result. If anything, man, I'm sure Ryan Spann, I'm sure that was a long flight home back from Singapore, man, because he had that fight there, man. He almost had it finished in the second round and maybe just let off the gas just a little bit. But again, I want to give credit. The man's nickname is Lionheart for a reason. We talk about how great a nickname is for the Korean Zombie. Well, Lionheart's nickname is that for a reason as well. He showed that Lionheart right there, and the fact that he battled back, because I thought he was done, man.
I thought they were going to stop the fight from his eye.
I'm telling you, and and you can see it. And as many fights as you've been inside the cage for, and as long as you've been around the sport, I know you see it the same way I do, right? When you see a guy or a girl visibly recoil in pain, you know there's an issue there, right? Because that's what they do all day, every day. It's going out there and get punched in the face, get kicked in the leg, get drilled to the body, show a poker face because you got to keep moving forward. You got to keep. And when he got cracked in that eye, you could see it right away. Like, I think Anthony Smith was almost like about to stop it. Like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And he was like, nope, I'm here. Let's go. Let's go. So deserves a lot of credit there. So yeah, just one of those razor thin fights. And they happen sometimes. They have not every split decision, not every decision that could have gone the other way is a bad one by the judges. I think sometimes we're a little too quick to lay some blame. This was just a super close fight.
When a doctor comes into the cage and has to open their eye for them, I was very scared the fight was going to be stopped there. When the doctor came in and she literally opened it for him. I was like, oh, this don't look good. This one's going to be stopped. But hey, listen, the UFC employs some of the best doctors. They know what exactly they are looking for. Even if it was a little bit of light, little bit of third dimension, she gave him the opportunity to keep going. And look what he did. He came out, he used his space, he used his distance, he used his veteran savvy to win him that fight. Or to eke it out at least.
Yeah. Does round number 2 deserve to be a 10-8 round, right? Because if that damage to the eye looks like it may have stopped it. Now, I know the type of damage, you talk about damage that we're looking for. It's usually concussive type damage. It's wobbly. It's but that was, real physical damage that looked like it was going to end the fight. So maybe that's the discussion. But I want to speak to your point on the ringside physicians as well. You talk about the ABC convention and going through the judging training and the officiating training. It's not necessarily the most exciting part of it as well, but they have like ringside physician training as well. And they lay out exactly what you're looking for. What does damage here on the eye mean? What does it mean here? What here? What is acceptable? It's incredible the level of precision and commitment that they have, as you said, to doing that at the highest level.
That was a fun fight. This is my next point in my notes that I want to get your opinion on is, like, listen, I'm a big I like watching Ryan Spann fight. I think he's got so much raw talent and ability, and he's just always right there.
I'm so glad you said that because I feel the exact same way. It's like there's just a little something missing. There's just a little polish that needs to be put on there. The raw materials are there. But again, we see that killer mentality, right? Like when you have a fighter hurt like Anthony Smith was in the second round, there are certain fighters that we know game over at that point. Now I'm swarming. Now it's done. There's blood in the water and the shark is going to attack, right? And then for whatever reason, just Ryan Spann seems to dial back a little bit and just doesn't seem to have that finishing instinct. So I'm so glad you made that same observation because I feel the exact same way. The talent is clear. The physical skill is clear. There's just one little tiny piece. I think he's just got to rectify that and then game over. Like he's going to take it to the next level.
And how he makes 205. He is a large man at 205.
Agreed. That's it. The physical tools are there, man. No question about it.
All right, next fight from this past card that I want to go over. Erin Blanchfield improves her record to 12-1 with a unanimous decision versus Santos. And this gal just keeps winning. She is so good. She took a lot of shots early, but her relentlessness is what won her this fight over 3 rounds. She clearly lost round number 1. Round number 2 and 3, she won on grit.
Yeah, she's the real deal. And scary to think, 24 years old, man. The future is bright. She is going to be fighting for a title. She is going to be challenging for a belt at some point. But this was a great win. Now, she called for the title shot next. I don't think this was enough. I'm so torn on this one, right? Because I think this was a quality win. I think Taila Santos is probably one of the most underrated fighters in the division, right? Like, I just don't think people, because she's not a big talker, because, she doesn't speak English.
She's not out there.
Oh, she's so good. Such an absolute physical specimen. She is so, so good. I really, to be honest, thought she deserved a rematch for the title. Obviously, she took Valentina Shevchenko to the brink, came up a little bit short, but that was a phenomenal fight. I thought she deserved another crack at it, maybe because Alexa Grasso won. That kind of, changed up the timeline a little bit, and that's why it didn't happen. But regardless, it's a quality win for Erin Blanchfield. But she called for the title shot next. I don't think it was one of those wins where you look at right away and you're like, oh, she's got to fight for the belt next.
I got to fight for her, though. I got to fight for her. I'm going to put on my Mick Maynard hat.
Let's hear it.
My Sean Shelby hat. I don't know which one matches that division, but I would love to see a title eliminator fight. Erin Blanchfield, Macy Barber.
Ooh, okay. I like that a lot. Two of the young guns going at it. Man, I like that.
And now let's go back to Macy Barber. She's only got 2 losses in her UFC career, in her whole career. One is when she blew out her knee. And then she came back and took an L that next fight back after tearing her MCL or her ACL. I forgot who was that to.
It was against Alexa Grasso, by the way. The
champ.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, the champ.
Yeah, it was against
so
the
if you're
champ.
gonna tell me that these 2 gals are not at the top of the heat, now listen, this is such a wide open division. It's so hard to see who's gonna get the next crack. But if you're gonna say, Eric, throw down some money on 2 girls that you want to fight each other for a title shot, Macy Barber and Erin Blanchfield.
I love that. I really, honestly, I love that fight. I had not thought forward about where she should fight next, but I love that one for the exact reasons you just said. Because to me, listen, coming up next week, UFC Paris, we've already teased is on the horizon. You've got a great fight there between Manon Fiorot and Rose Namajunas. And especially being in France, if Manon happens to get that win, in front of her hometown crowd, the place is going to go nuts. It'll be a big scene. If Rose wins, she's Rose Namajunas. You know what I mean? Everybody loves Rose. She's the former champ. She's Thug Rose. We love everything about her. So I think that's probably the number 1 contender fight next. But then you got to have one more fight to take the winner of that one. So I love that. And maybe let's just go ahead and extrapolate it forward. Maybe you put that matchup that you're proposing on the undercard of the next title fight. So it's right there with it. So, I love it. I love that matchmaking. I think you nailed it spot on. I'll head over to Zuffa offices today. They got a matchmaker meeting tomorrow, man. I'll go ahead and just drop that off. I'll put your name on it. I'll give you a number in case they need to text you to get any further details, maybe some deals you got planned. But I think we just did the job for them.
Hey, listen, these things write themselves, right? I'm not going to say I'm that great, but, if you guys want to.
When they're right there, you got to take them, right?
Absolutely. So now let's go ahead and look ahead. I thought that Singapore card was really, really fun. It was definitely a great way to have my kids eat their breakfast and me zone out at 6 a.m. on my phone without waking up my wife. I'll take that all day. I'm sorry the rest of you guys had to wake up early. That's my normal rise and shine time. So that is not a problem whatsoever. But now I want to look forward. I want to look ahead. This week, Ciryl Gane, Sergey Spivak, 16-3 Spivak, 11-2 Ciryl Gane from Paris. Fight Night, 226. I've been in that arena. It's actually super, super cool. But I think this is a fight that Ciryl Gane has to win, right? And he can't, he just has to win this fight. But the Polar Bear, man, one of the best nicknames ever, the Polar Bear, I was looking up his record now, right? 16 wins in 7 knockouts, 7 submissions, and only 2 decisions. This has got some fireworks written all over it because I think he's going to try and close that distance on Ciryl Gane. We know what a cerebral sniper Ciryl Gane is, but I think this fight can go anywhere. And Spivak's got the tools to get it done. It's just how cerebral is Ciryl Gane going to be in these approaches to this.
It's great way to lay it out. And by the way, I should point out another early start time, but this one a little bit less early. This is a little more conducive to my life here in Las Vegas. The prelims will start at 9 a.m. Vegas time. The main card will be at noon on the West Coast. So a little bit better. But, man, I think you laid out exactly why this fight is so important. I mean, Ciryl Gane, man, he had the setback. He had the disappointment, man. We just saw the look all over his face about the frustration that he had. And then who does he get in his return? Oh, by the way, he gets a dude that's probably going to try to grapple you and take you to the ground right now. You know what I mean? So this is a challenging match. I mean, you look at Sergey, and he doesn't. You just look at him; he doesn't immediately strike you as like, oh, this is an incredible athlete right here. You know, you just look at him. I don't know. Come on, what's this guy doing? But he is incredibly effective with his grappling game, and that is a stylistic nightmare for Ciryl Gane, who's the big athletic striker who has to stick and move.
Who subs Derek Lewis?
Come on now. That's
Derek
crazy.
Lewis just bench presses people off of him. He arms them.
He's got that get up defense, right? Or it's like, how do you get back to your feet? Well, you just stand up. That's how you get back to your feet. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, Sergey's a monster. And this is, I'll be honest with you. I'm a little surprised at the odds on this one. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look.
I have not.
Sergey is a slight dog in this one. And I get it in terms of Cyryl's the name, right? Cyryl's the guy
that championship experience with the big level fights.
He really does. He's got the championship experience. He's got the big level fights. He's got the home field advantage, right? He's fighting in his backyard. So I understand all those things. But me just breaking down the fight, he struggles with grappling. Sergey's a grappling specialist. Has Ciryl short up the holes this fast, this quick? I don't know. This is a challenging one. Does he have the ability to win? He absolutely. Ciryl Gane. You look at, I just kind of said, you look at Sergey and you don't necessarily think, oh, that dude's a stud. You look at Ciryl and you go, oh, that dude's a stud. You know what I mean? Like he's so quick for a heavyweight.
Let's not forget that Ciryl Gane, he does have chops on the ground, right? He's a heavyweight who's leg locked people.
He does, but I just the takedown defense.
He tore Francis Ngannou's knee to shreds.
He did. He absolutely did. It just, man, that fight with Jon Jones, it just, I mean, now we're talking about Jon Jones. You know what I mean? We're talking about the greatest of all time.
Just that Jon Jones?
Yeah, just that guy. Just Jon Jones. But it was just levels, right? I mean, it was just, it wasn't even a fight the way he just went over there and took him down. So I love this. It's competitive, man. This is a really, really good main event. And it's one, I love fights when I can see either outcome happening, right? We talk about it all the time. There's certain times you look at it and you go, well, that guy has a chance, but we kind of know what's going to happen here. This is a fight where I look at it and I don't think I know what's going to happen. I'm like, man, can definitely see Ciryl being the better athlete and just sticking and moving and staying away from him and hitting with something big. But I can also see Sergey just making it grimy, making it gritty and grappling him to the ground and smothering him there. So I'm interested in this one.
Now, this isn't an apples to apples, but I always have to draw off of past experiences, right, to inform conclusions. And Derek Lewis wasn't even able to get close to Ciryl Gane. That's how good he is. Now I don't know the reach advantage. I don't know the style wrist reaches and whatnot, but like somebody who is coming forward, like a Derek Lewis, and somebody who is Spivak who's coming forward, that there's a tell there for me to a degree, right? And the tell is that Derek Lewis wasn't even able to get anywhere close. Anywhere.
It's a really good observation. That's a really, really good observation. And I think with Ciryl, he's not going to be concerned about, because what are the biggest things that help your grappling is a little bit of element of surprise, right? Like if I know you're shooting a double, if I know you're trying to grapple with me, then I'm good. My hands are down. I'm ready to sprawl. I'm ready to underhook. I'm ready to do all that. But if I'm a little worried that you might be throwing hands at me, and I'm up here because I'm trying to throw, and then you shoot on the legs, that's different. And Sergey's not going to have that element of surprise because I don't think Ciryl is worried about his striking whatsoever. And as we said, Cyryl's not exactly, or I should say, Sergey's not exactly the fastest guy, right? He's not the most athletic guy. He's not going to surprise you with, oh my gosh, how did you close the distance on me from 4 feet away that fast? You know what I mean? So that's a good point as well, man. That's a really good point as well that really kind of leans in Cyryl's favor.
Yeah, and it's just going to be like, who can dictate where it goes. So, I mean, I think it's fun. I definitely will be watching it this weekend. I'm actually competing at Jiu-Jitsu World Champ, the old man, the Masters Division Jiu-Jitsu World Championships this weekend. But I will be flying back and I will be tuning into this card. But 2 weeks away, right? 2 weeks away from Australia, Israel Adesanya versus Sean Strickland. Now, people are not giving Strickland a chance in this fight. A lot of the people talking, listen, we said this just 2 weeks ago. Styles, make, fights. To me, from just what I've seen is that these are two, and both people are saying, well, they're strikers. Yeah, but they are strikers in completely different ways, right? And the style of Sean Strickland, in my opinion, is being completely overlooked by the masses when it comes to Izzy, right? It's not like he is not going to try and kickbox with him, and he's not going to try and take him down. What he is going to try and do is get in his face. And when you get in a kickboxer's face and you get in a guy who uses range exceptionally well, like an Izzy, when that range is closed and now we're fighting in a phone booth where Sean Strickland loves to do a lot of his fighting, that poses problems. I'm not going to say it's going to happen. I'm just saying that people are counting this fight out, and I am not one of them.
Yeah, I like what you're saying there. I mean, listen, on paper, this is a very, very difficult matchup for Sean Strickland. I mean, but Israel Adesanya is a difficult matchup for anybody, right? He's one of the greatest in the world.
I think he's a win or two away from goated middleweight ever, and that is saying a lot.
That's saying a lot, bro, because we're talking about Anderson Silva's division, but it's hard to argue with you, man. The results that he's getting, how busy he's staying, and I mean, the level of competition that he's competing against, unbelievable. So I can't argue with you there, but you're right. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, listen, is Israel Adesanya a heavy favorite? Yeah, absolutely, and not just because he's Israel Adesanya, but again, let's look at the X's and O's on paper. Sean Strickland, you do know what he's going to do. He's going to move forward, and he's going to look to engage you. What is Israel Adesanya great at? Being an incredible counterpuncher, right? Like, he's just such a master of range management, of distance, of striking. So because of, in some ways, Sean Strickland is custom made for Israel Adesanya. However, Sean Strickland does have that edge about him, man. He's got that great. I like what you said there, right? You think about Sean Strickland, you think, oh, he's more of a striker. He likes to jab a lot, you know what I mean? He works behind that jab. He's kind of got that Philly shell going type thing that he works behind. But I think you said it right. But he's not trying to kickbox you. He's trying to fight you. You know what I mean? He's trying to move inside, in tight, make it dirty, make it rough. He's not trying to finesse you on the outside. So to count him out is a severe disservice to, you know, just his durability is great. He's not going away, but it's a tough one. It's a tough one, no doubt. Israel Adesanya is just such a phenomenal striker. I mean, you look at Sean Strickland versus Alex Bejeda. I mean, you know, obviously not necessarily that one-shot kill power that like Alex that Israel has, but he does have that style of game as well. So I'm intrigued by this. I lean towards Israel Adesanya, of course, but you can't count Sean Strickland out of anything, man. I'm
just saying that
he's crazy, but he's tough.
I'm just saying, in my opinion, this, because a lot of people have looked at this card and they're like, oh, this is not a good card and whatever, right? To me, this is such an exciting main event for me for the reasons that we just outlaid. Izzy could starch him, right? Or it could be a very chaotic technical fight. Or Sean Strickland can do Sean Strickland, which he's done to pretty much everybody, Seda Pereira, right? And when he throws and when he finds his rhythm in his game, in his distance, this guy throws in volume and does not let you get a breath of fresh air. And that's why I just love this fight, because it can go any of these three ways. Obviously, it's heavily favored for Israel Adesanya. And I agree with that, right? I'm just saying, don't discredit Styles making fights. We even saw, I mean, recent history can tell us that.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And you know what? And you're talking about the fight itself. Let me tell you what also people should be looking forward to. The press conference is going to be crazy. The last two times these guys were at a press conference together, it was absolutely nuts. And they weren't even fighting each other. No, they weren't even fighting each other. They became the highlight. I remember looking at the other media next to me and just being like, well, there's a fight I didn't know I need to see that I now know I need to see, because they were going on it. And I was just noticing this as well. The media day should be fun as well, right? Sean Strickland, when he comes in and talks to the media, like, he basically just does crowd work in the media room, and he just starts like busting on all the media members. And I was thinking, man, we've seen a lot of them. I just had to pull up his record to see this. He has not fought outside of Las Vegas since 2018. So there's going to be a whole new batch of media people that he's not used to seeing, not the same familiar faces. And so that media day should be real fun, because he's going to have a whole new group of crowd to work on. And they're going to be a whole new group of people that haven't had to deal with asking questions of Sean Strickland before. And I can tell you from experience, it is unique.
You don't know what is going to come out of his mouth. It
Nope.
may be tremendously insightful or tremendously inappropriate.
Yes,
we
it
don't
may.
know. Or
And he
both
might-
at the same time.
Or both, and he may be attacking you at the time that he does it. I mean, you just never know. I mean, it's he may put you on the spot. I mean, you got to be on your toes when you're asking Sean Strickland questions. So,
and is it just me now? I've never been I've never been on the receiving end, probably like you have and many of the other media people. But watching from afar, he seems like he can really get into somebody without making it personal in a weird way.
Oh,
he can say the most craziest things to you, hurtful things. And I don't know if it's hurtful, but he's saying it out of a place where it's like, but don't take it personal. This is my philosophy on life.
It's 100%. He's going to hit you after it. He'll insult you and be like, oh, I'm just kidding. You know what I mean? Oh, he's just having fun. He's he's that guy, man. He's a trip to be around. And it's weird because you're right. Some of the things he says, there are some things that he says that you hear about, you go, I hadn't thought about that before. That's actually a good point. And then he says other stuff where you're like, Sean, you can't say that stuff in public, dog. What are you doing, man? Like, they're going to cancel you right now. You know, he always joked about the fact that he can't ever get sponsors because nobody wants to be a part of it and be associated with them. Like, it'll be a fun fight week for sure. And, man, we talked about the crowd in Singapore and how great they were. Man, I can tell you, I will not be making the trip down to Australia, but I will tell you, from the many times I've gone down there, the fans down there are absolutely amazing, and they've been yearning for a fight. And you're right. I think, they're probably a little bit disappointed in our together, but they are getting to see one of the all-time greats, if not the greatest of all time, well on his way to being there. And they are phenomenal fans. The fights usually start there about like 9:30, 10 in the morning. They're already about 6 Coopers deep into the morning, got a buzz on, bringing it. They're full from the start of the fight. I love fight nights in Australia.
Listen, I want to break down this fight, but we'll wait to do it because it's still a few weeks away. But the machine should probably start working here pretty soon. The storylines are going to start coming out. A lot more microphones are starting to be putting in Strickland's face here in about a week or so. And I'm here for it.
I agree. I think it's going to be fun. I think building this is it'll definitely be one of those cards where you're not necessarily like just, been looking forward to it for weeks and months and thinking about this fight. But then when it comes fight night, you're going to like, oh, they're about ready to go at it. Like I said, they stole the press conference of a fight that they weren't even fighting against each other. I literally remember looking at the other media members like, yep.
And you don't see Izzy get bullied verbally very often. Right? And Strickland wouldn't even let him get a word in.
No.
He just talked over him all the time.
Well, and it's funny, right? Because Izzy, you think of him with the quick wit. He's sharp, you know what I mean? But, like, Sean literally does not care. It's hard to win a verbal battle with somebody who literally does not care, will say anything, is not concerned about saying the wrong thing at any point in time. I mean, it's kind of hard to beat that guy because he's never going to admit that you got to beat him. You're never going to get the better of him. And, oh, man, he's talking about Israel Adesanya's painted nails and all this. I mean, I'm telling you, it's going to get awfully tasty around fight week for sure.
And if you guys want to know a little bit more about Sean Strickland, he did a great interview on the Joe Rogan podcast, really talked about his upbringing, everything this guy has had to go through in his life. I think it will make you look at him in a different light. Certainly made me look at him in a different light. Just need to say that because people tend to pile on Strickland. But unless you know where somebody come from, you don't know where they're going. And just the transformation his life has kind of taken already is nothing short of remarkable. He shouldn't be here.
So right about it. I mean, first of all, survived a tragic accident that could have taken his career, if not his life. But you talk about, as you said, the upbringing that he came from. I mean, you hear people say they came from a bad place. That dude came from a bad place. Not good, man. So, it is pretty amazing for a lot of reasons that he is where he's at right now. And good for him. He's getting this opportunity. Again, tough fight. Tough fight. But he's a tough dude. You know what I mean? Stylistically, this is challenging, but he's getting it. And he's getting that payday that comes along with a title fight, man. And that dude has been in the game for a long time. I mean, legendary trainer, whether it be for good or bad. I mean, that dude will go to any gym. We'll take on, we'll spar with anybody. We'll give hard rounds to anybody, maybe 2 hard rounds sometimes. But the dude's put the miles in for sure.
Well, that's going to wrap us up for this week's episode of Cageside with John Morgan. The Blessed Express does it again. Korean Zombie says farewell. 2 short weeks away. But in the meantime, we have Ciryl Gane fighting this weekend versus Spivak. What do you got going on this weekend?
I've got not one, but 2 CFFC events out at the Parks Casino in Bensalem, Pennsylvania. So if you're out in that area and you can make it out, we got Friday night and Saturday night, CFFC 123 and 124. If you can't make it out there, obviously you can tune in on UFC Fight Pass as always. So making the journey out there for back-to-back cards and staying busy as we get ready. It's gonna be a crazy month, man. We got those back-to-back events. Later on in the month, we're going to North Dakota for the first time, which I understand I may be seeing you out there as well in North Dakota. We're also not to be announced yet, but I'll just throw it out. We got a grappling event that's going to be on September 30th as well. So CFFC staying awfully busy in the month of September.
Then Florida shortly after that.
That's right. Florida in October shortly after that. And I don't know. Are we allowed to? Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
It's happening. I don't know if we're supposed to.
I'll see you there as well.
Yeah, we'll be there.
Yeah, we'll be there. But yeah, I'm actually flying out to Las Vegas on Wednesday, competing in the World Masters Jiu-Jitsu IBJJF World Masters tournament. This coming weekend, I compete on Thursday, so hopefully coming back with some hardware. But man, I'm in a 50-man bracket.
Wait, I was gonna say, yeah, for people that don't know, this is the tournament, man. You know what I mean? Like the number of high quality, 50 is insane, bro. But the number of legit black belts that are coming out here, legit grapple. I mean, it's absolutely incredible, man. It's a who's who. In fact, man, my young son got the opportunity to train, not train with, but to be overseen by Demetrius Johnson. Demetrius Johnson, Mighty Mouse, another one of the all-time greats. I mean, he's definitely in the argument of the best ever. For a lot of people, he is number 1 pound for pound. You know, I got to throw that John Jones in there as well for that discussion.
He's competing this week.
But that's what I was going to say. He came out because he's competing. If that tells you the type of level of athletes they're competing, he came out to Las Vegas early because he's competing in the World Masters. And because of that, he came to American Top Team Nevada, was just putting some time in there, donated some of his time to being on the mats with the kids and helping teach a class, which was a super cool experience.
And he's only a brown belt. Give me a break.
I'd say, yeah, right. It was actually pretty funny. He showed up to the gym and forgot to grab his belt, so he had like a gray belt on from his kid, and he was wearing that. And the instructors there were like, "Bro, we'll get you a brown belt. Hang on 1 second. You don't have to wear this gray belt." Hey, but how cool is that? Demetrius Johnson, one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time, was more than happy to just go out there in the mats in a gray belt of his son, because he knows that belt, while it's an amazing accomplishment, is just a symbol, right? It's about your skills out there. But I thought it was so cool that he gave his time to be out there and teaching the kids, man. I mean, this is one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time, but that is the martial arts way, right? You give back as well, and you help teach the new generation. And it's an honor that I don't even think the kids realized how cool it was. I think it'll take them a few years to.
Well, hopefully I will be coming home with some hardware. I have a feeling Demetrius Johnson will be. He's actually in one of my teammates' division. So, I hope I'd love for my boy to go against him, even if he gets smashed just to see it, man. That'd be awesome. That is pretty cool. Yeah,
right. It'd be a horrible matchup, right? I mean, it'd be a terrible matchup, but what a cool honor. And what other realm of sports can you have that opportunity to go out there and actually compete against somebody? That would be really cool. I don't want to cheer for it because I think that might be the end of your boys' tournament, but at the same time, I do want to cheer for it to happen because what a cool experience that would be.
So, with that being said, he is John Morgan. I am Eric McMahon. We'll see you next week on Cageside with John Morgan, and enjoy the fights.